Hello and welcome to a bit of an unusual video. Last week, news broke that Saab's successor, NEVs, have been purchased. The company's former owner, Chinese real estate company Evergrande, has been in big economic trouble for quite some time, and rumors of a near-done deal have been circling since last summer. But now it's official, and as a Saab fan and a Saab owner, I'd like to give my 5 cents on what may happen. First off, the deal itself. The buyer hasn't bought NEVs outright, but rather all of the assets within the company. That means the facilities and the IPs and so on and so forth. In all likelihood, this maneuver was done to avoid the current company's debts. A strange detail is that the buyer remains unknown. In this video, I'm going to paint out a few different scenarios as to what might happen moving forward. But before we get any deeper into today's content, I want to remind you to comment, subscribe, and like. By doing so, you'll encourage and enable me to make more and better content. We first need to acknowledge Evergrande's legacy. You see, Evergrande is in the real estate business, and due to the intricacies of Chinese law, they couldn't buy more land. Thus, to grow their business, they wanted to cannibalize parking space to build more homes. At the time, autonomous vehicles was a big buzzword, a, a technology that seemed to be just around the corner. It's on this premise that they invested in NEVs. Thus, the already developed electric Saab 9-3, which had already at that point been reviewed by the press and had entered limited production, was cancelled. Instead, the company's efforts were redirected to Pons, a ride-sharing service built around proprietary autonomous vehicles known as Sango. These are currently being tested in Sweden. It's quite likely that the buyer, whoever it may be, sees this as the primary value or indeed the only value in the company. Another potential scenario is that it's a competing car brand that actually wants the production facilities for themselves. Potentially, it could be Volvo, who actually have announced that they are going to build an additional production facility in Europe to manufacture a wider range of cars. There are also non-European companies willing to invest in a factory to circumvent trade tariffs. The Toyota GR86 in Europe, for example, costs something like $13,000 more than in the US because of those tariffs. So for maybe Chinese car manufacturers or even Toyota, that would be a good sacrifice. Another potential approach is that someone wants to turn Saab into something similar to Valmet. Valmet, for those of you who don't know, is a Finnish company who make cars for other companies. They've made Fiskars, they've made Porsches, and actually they've made Saab. And for a period of time, the factory was called Saab Valmet or Valmet Saab. I don't recall. Um, However, the prospect that excites me the most is the polar opposite of the first scenario. We do know that there are parties interested in restoring Saab. Koenigsegg wanted to take the company over back in 2008, while a group of wealthy Swedes tried to buy Volvo at roughly the same time. Not to mention Victor Muller and Carl Yang, who both were quite passionate and were responsible for both previous revival attempts of Saab. I'm convinced that there are more such groups, such investors. The main question is whether they have enough money and whether they have the confidence to actually pull the trigger. If this scenario was to happen, if Saab were to be restored as car manufacturers, the question is what cars they would produce. The electric 9-3, with its large size and low intended price, would have been a great deal in 2015 when it was intended to go into production. In 2023, not so much. It's a horribly dated design being based on, at this point, a 20-year-old model, or at least whenever they would be able to resume production. Uh, Nevs did propose new models based on it, which actually looked kind of cool. So potentially they could develop a new EV model based on that platform. Another scenario is that they would use the Phoenix platform, which was developed way back in the Spiker era. And that's what this new Sango model is based on. Another matter is what the company will be called and what the cars will be called, because they can't use Saab or Nevs for names. Perhaps the new brand could carry the name of Saab trim levels, as those aren't owned by Saab. Maybe we'll see a Linear 9.3 or a Vector 9.3 or Aero or Vigan. Any of those would have some brand recognition. They could even use the Sonnet name, which was carried by old sports cars. The issue is that the last Sonnet went out of productions in the 70s, so I don't think that it would have much brand recognition. A matter we need to understand is that Saab aren't inherently opposed to having their name used on cars again. What they don't want, however, is clients believing that they're on the brinks of bankruptcy, because that did happen. They at least claim that it did happen, that they approached clients trying to market their military equipment, and the client going, hey, aren't you going out of business? Which, it was hurtful for their business. They don't want that again. So in order for us to ever see new cars badged as Saabs again, we'll need an owner who can promise long-term stability. That either means a big name company with deep pockets, maybe Toyota, or quite simply a new owner who manages to achieve continuous production for several years. Like if someone manages to keep the factory running without interruptions for 5 or 10 years, maybe Saab would open up to negotiations. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you think about Saab's future? Let me see it in the comment sections below. This has been a video by Jacob Holgerson. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and welcome back next time.